Brian kept his distance from the observation window, pretending to calibrate the atmospheric sensors for the third time that hour. Through the reinforced polymer glass, he could see Nyla's chitinous form moving gracefully through the xenobiology lab, her forearms manipulating holographic data streams with practiced efficiency. The Kishari, biologist, had been aboard the research station Frontier Dawn for 6 standard months now, part of the first interstellar scientific exchange program. Her species had achieved faster-than-light travel 3 centuries before humanity had even split the atom. By all accounts, the Kishari were humanity's benevolent guides into the galactic community, patient, curious, and fascinated by Earth's peculiar evolutionary path. Brian Chun. Nyla's voice crackled through his cum implant, the universal translator rendering her clicking vocalizations into perfect Mandarin-accented English. Your avoidance behavior has reached statistically significant levels. I require clarification. Brian's jaw tightened. Of course she'd noticed. Kishari didn't just study biology. They lived it, breathed it, saw patterns in behavior that humans missed entirely. He'd been careful, or so he thought. But careful apparently wasn't enough when dealing with a species that could calculate predator-prey dynamics by watching someone walk across a room. I'm not avoiding you, he lied, keeping his eyes on the readouts. Incorrect. Nyla emerged from the lab, her segmented legs carrying her toward him with unsettling silence. She stood nearly 7 feet tall when fully upright, her exoskeleton shimmering with iridescent blues and greens under the station's LED lighting. Over the past 42 days, you have reduced our interaction time by 73%. You no longer eat in the communal dining area when my shift schedule places me there. You have declined 12 invitations to collaborate on the extremophile protein analysis. This represents a significant behavioral deviation from your baseline established during our first 4 months of acquaintance. Brian finally turned to face her. Nyla's compound eyes, each containing thousands of individual photoreceptors, studied him with an intensity that made his skin prickle. Where humans had evolved to read subtle facial expressions, Kishari had evolved to read everything else: posture, breathing rate, muscle tension, pheromone composition. You want to know why? Brian asked, surprised by the edge in his own voice. Affirmative. Understanding drives scientific inquiry. Uncertainty in social dynamics impairs optimal collaboration? Brian laughed, a bitter sound that echoed in the corridor. You really want to know? Fine, I'm avoiding you because every time I work with you, every time I see you solve problems that would take our best minds months to crack, every time you casually mention some technology your species developed before humans discovered agriculture, it reminds me that we're the junior species, the children being shown around by the adults. Nyla's head tilted, a gesture her species used to indicate processing. This distresses you? Distresses? Brian's hands clenched. 3 months ago, we were analyzing the radiation-resistant bacteria from Tau Ceti 4. I spent 2 weeks building a genetic model. 2 weeks. Nyla, you looked at my work for 40 minutes and found 6 errors I'd missed and 3 optimization pathways I hadn't even considered. You weren't trying to show off. You weren't being condescending. You were just being you. Being a Kishari. Being someone whose species has had molecular biology figured out since before my ancestors learned to make fire. I do not understand the problem, Nyla said. Scientific collaboration requires different skill sets. Your pattern recognition in chaos theory applications exceeds my capabilities. Your species' ability to formulate creative solutions from limited data is remarkable. Remarkable? Brian shook his head. That's just a nice way of saying we're good at guessing because we don't know better. Look, I appreciate what you're trying to do, but I can't. He paused, searching for words. Do you know what it's like to realize you're not special? That your entire species' achievements are just catching up to where everyone else already is? Nyla stood motionless for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice carried a quality the translator struggled to render something between sadness and amusement. Brian Chun, I must inform you of something we Kishari rarely discuss with developing species. 42,000 years ago, my people achieved sentience. We built tools, discovered fire, developed agriculture. We looked at the stars and wondered. Do you know how long it took us to achieve spaceflight? Brian shrugged. I don't know. 1,000 years? 2,000? 38,000 years? Nyla's mandibles clicked softly. We are, by galactic standards, the slowest developing species on record. Our evolution favored caution, consensus, incremental progress. We nearly destroyed ourselves 6 times not through war, but through excessive deliberation, through our biological inability to take risks. Brian stared at her, his anger deflating into confusion. Your species achieved spaceflight in less than 12,000 years from agricultural development, Nyla continued. You went from first flight to walking on your moon in 66 years? Your technological acceleration curve is unprecedented. Do you understand what this means? That the reckless? That you're terrifying. Nyla's compound eyes seemed to shimmer. Every established species in the Galactic Council watches humanity with a mixture of fascination and fear. You solve problems we would spend decades analyzing. You attempt the impossible because you haven't calculated the odds. You form bonds with alien species in years when it took us centuries. Your species' neural plasticity, your ability to adapt, your tolerance for uncertainty, these traits are not weaknesses. They are why we sought you out. Brian felt something shift in his chest. You're saying, I'm saying that in 300 years, when humanity has had the time we've had, the galaxy will look very different. And we Keshari, we slow-thinking, careful, deliberate beings, we want it to be your friends before that day comes. Because we've seen the projections, Brian Chun, we've run the models. And every single one of them shows that humanity won't be the junior species for long. The corridor fell silent except for the ambient hum of the station's life support systems. I've been an idiot, Brian finally said. Statistically probable, given your species' tendency toward emotional reasoning. Nyla's mandibles twitched in what he'd learned was the Keshari equivalent of a smile. However, it is a correctable error. The protein analysis still requires completion. Will you join me? Brian nodded, feeling a grin spread across his face. Yeah, I will. As they walked back to the lab together, Brian realized that maybe being the new species wasn't about catching up to everyone else. Maybe it was about becoming something the galaxy had never seen before, and judging by the way Nyla had carefully phrased her answer, the Keshari were counting on exactly that. The ND.